afternoon. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Yoni.
You came here from the parade. The parade, the march, was beginning. They changed the name even because it's different this year. You were there with the hostage families. You were there with bereaved families. Tell us about that.
Well, it was even more moving than in any other year, because to march there with the bereaved families and the families of the hostages and to see thousands and thousands of people cheering in support of Israel was extremely moving, and it's also, emboldened me to continue fighting for Israel and convey the clear message that we are not going to stop fighting until Hamas is eliminated. Until Hamas is eliminated.
Because you were there with bereaved families, right? Bereaved families who came with that message. That was very unique.
Yeah, they marched with me, people who sacrificed their loved ones, and they tell the truth. They say we did not lost our dear ones in order to stop this war and keep Hamas in power. So we will continue to fight for the release of the hostages, but also to make sure that Hamas will be eliminated, as I said.
Oh, so we all heard the big news that you're concluding your term as UN ambassador. What drove you to make that decision, and what are the plans for the future?
Honestly, I miss Israel. For someone like me who was involved for the last 28 years in almost everything that happened in Israel from within, to stay outside of Israel for 4 years, it's a long time. So I miss Israel. I felt that this is the time for me to return home and to be with the people of Israel during our difficult time. So that's why I made this choice. And I also have 2 kids who are about to, one of them already enlisted to the military. My daughter is supposed to enlist in the next few months. This is the right time for me to return home.
Return home back to politics?
I'm still an ambassador. But I can tell you in my own way that I learned a lot here. And I plan to utilize my skills and my experience to have the maximum impact, positive impact on the future of Israel, but I will do it when the time is right.
As children, they taught us that shmum, UN is nothing, they all hate us. After 4 years as Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, what's the single, biggest insight that you learned throughout these years?
You know what? We used to call it shmum, like Joe Schmo, to express the ineffectiveness of the UN. But I think that maybe my biggest insight that today the UN poses a threat not only against Israel, but to the entire world. Why? Because the UN is so fundamentally distorted, because the political makeup of the UN has changed so dramatically since the year it was founded, back in 1945, with only 51 countries. Most of them shared, similar values to our time, when we have 193 countries that the political makeup is so distorted. Each one of them has exactly the same voting power in the General Assembly, but, vast majority of them are non-democratic. 1/3 of them are Muslim countries. They do not vote based on the bilateral relations they have with Israel. They vote only based on their political interests, and their political interest, sadly, many times is to whitewash their crimes. You see countries like Russia, I can say it, when they lead the Security Council and they can veto any resolution against the war in Ukraine, or you see the representatives of Iran, regardless of Israel, a country that is responsible for the murdering of thousands of its own civilians, and when they come here to New York, to the UN, they receive the red carpet treatment. So I ask myself, what's the use of the existence of the UN? There's no use anymore because the UN doesn't serve its original cause, the purpose, to defend human rights, to prevent wars. It cannot prevent wars. See what's happening in Ukraine, in Sudan, in Nigeria. Look what happened in Syria. Ignore Israel for a second. The UN today is destructive, is a threat to the entire world.
So maybe it's a lost cause. Why was it important for you to do what you did and whoever will come instead of you as well?
Well, it's also a very good question because sometimes I wake up and I ask myself, do we really need to be there? Do we really have to continue and stay as a member of the UN? But then I remember that I'm not there only, for the kavod, the honor. I'm there to fight for the truth, to expose the lies. We still have there many allies. Some of them marched with me an hour ago. But we need to maintain the legitimacy and the alliance that we have with so many countries. And if I'm not there, who's going to fight for the truth? So it's still important. But instead of leaving the UN, which many people are suggesting, maybe we should think of start convincing world leaders to defund the UN. Because, as I said, if we convince the President of the United States, Argentina, the Netherlands, Italy, Sweden, some countries that now have, leadership that might be able to listen to what we tell them, and they decide to defund the UN, and unless it goes through fundamental reforms, and if not, the Western world, like the late John McCain suggested in the past, we should create and establish our own club, what we call the League of Democracies. Because when you see dictators and rogue states whitewashing their crimes by exploiting the UN systems and getting elected to sit on the Security Council, on the Human Rights Council, who are the justices, the judges that sits in the International Court of Justice and tell us if we commit genocide or not? Judges from Lebanon, from Russia, from Somalia. It's insane. You can make these things up. So we have to campaign to erode the credibility and the legitimacy of the UN and try to convince world leaders to establish a new international organization with only democracies, and whoever wants to join will have to play by our rules.
So the next ambassador will have lots of work, and you'll continue in this field, I believe. Ambassador Gilad Erdan, thank you very much for joining us, and good luck. And
thank you.
We hope to see you back in Israel soon.
Thank you to Besheva, to Dudu, and have a successful and fruitful conference like in every year. Thank you.